It's a pleasure. Great to be with you.
Hello, good evening in Europe and good morning in Brazil. Today, Thursday, November the 19th, we are meeting Professor SACHS from Columbia University, a renowned person in the space of sustainability. And we are going to have a short talk with him about the hot topics on sustainability and how these relate with consumers. So my name is Stefano Quintarelli. I'm a longtime friend of Euroconsumers and Altro Consumo, and you have probably seen me in other meetings in the previous years, and I'm going to hold this interview with Professor Jeffrey Sachs. First of all, Professor Sachs, thank you very much for being with us today.
It's a pleasure. Great to be with you.
Okay, Professor Sachs, you recently in an interview, you declared that the Europe Green Deal was, and I quote, the first comprehensive plan to achieve sustainable development in any major region, and such it becomes a global benchmark. Considering the present pandemic of coronavirus, should it be adjusted in terms of ambition or timing, or on the contrary, is it execution can somehow help recovering what Europe has lost with the pandemic?
Well, let me thank Euroconsumers for enabling me to be with you and to be with everybody that is participating in this year's forum. I think it's clear we have a two-step process right now. First, we have to end this pandemic. And unfortunately, our countries have not done so, even though this is a solvable crisis. And I'll explain that in a moment. Then we're going to have to rebuild. We're going to have to build our economies back in smarter ways so that they are more prepared, more resilient, more fair, and more sustainable. Let me talk about these two steps, if I might. This COVID-19 pandemic hit the whole world, but different parts of the world have succeeded at different rates in addressing the crisis. And it is important for us in the Americas. I'm in New York as we speak, and we're talking about Brazil, we're talking about Western Europe. It's really important for us in the Americas and in Europe to realize that in the Asia-Pacific region, the pandemic has almost been ended. In China, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Cambodia, Lao PDR, there's very little virus. Some days, no cases at all, no new cases, whereas these days in the United States, we have around 180,000 new cases per day. In Brazil, around 110,000 new cases per day. In Spain, 21,000 new cases per day, and so forth. What's going on? That one part of the world's near zero and the other part, our part, is explosive. Well, I think this is something for us to discuss because our governance has not been good. Our public health systems have not been good. Our public has not been good in terms of responsibility, but it's not been well informed also by government. So the crisis remains terrible. Now, then there's a second stage. We're going to get our acts together, finally, to stop this pandemic. Thanks God, some new vaccines are apparently showing real promise, and they could be implemented in 2021, which would be a big help. Then we're going to ask, what happened to our economies? Why did we have such bad governance? Our governments were not watching science. They were rejecting science. They were not prepared for threats that we had been warned about for years. Now, I'm going to warn us about other threats that we're also neglecting. Climate change, for example, a very dire threat to sustainability on the planet. Income and wealth inequality, which is soaring, a very dire threat to our social stability on the planet. We need societies that can address such crises in a serious way. If not, every crisis is going to devastate us. And I think we've learned now in the US, you could be rich as can be, but if you have a terrible government like Trump, the worst president we ever had in our history, you end up with a disaster. And I would say for most of our governments, they've not been up to it. When it comes to the European Green Deal, what I like about it is that it was written by serious people looking at the real problems for the longer term. I often joke that it's very bureaucratic, but in the way that the sociologist Max Weber talked about bureaucracy, he talked about it as the rational process of government. And that's what the European Green Deal is. It's rational. It says we have a climate crisis, we have a crisis of pollution, we have a crisis of land degradation. Now, what are we going to do about it? For climate change, we're going to decarbonize the energy system to move to renewable energy. For wastes and pollution, we're going to move to circular economy. And for the land degradation, we're going to move to sustainable agriculture. Very rational, very sound, good principles. I wish Brazil, the United States, will follow them and that Europe will actually implement them. But they're even more true now than they were when they were written, because the urgency of building back in a systematic way is even stronger now than it was last year when these principles were promulgated and put into this overarching holistic framework.
Thank you, Professor Sachs. You are renowned for being the mentor and the promoter and inventor of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And how do you see their integration with hard law regulation around the world? Should it be objectives that are non-mandatory, non-compulsory like today, or should they be ideally transformed into national laws?
Great question. I think people should understand first the spirit of the Sustainable Development Goals. These were agreed by all 193 UN member states in September 2015 as the 17 goals for the year 2030 to achieve more inclusive and more sustainable societies. And they're really impressive goals about ending poverty, ending hunger, achieving universal access to quality healthcare and quality education, gender equality, access to infrastructure, safe, clean energy, protection of ecosystems, both the terrestrial and the marine ecosystems, and having the rule of law. Then the 17th of the SDGs is global partnership to achieve all of these high objectives. Well, these are ambitious goals. Many countries will fall short of achieving them because the governance is not adequate, or in the case of poor countries, because they're not helped enough financially to close some of the gaps in access to technology or infrastructure, and those countries need help. So what are these goals? Are they just mere rhetoric and aspirations, or, as you say, are they part of law? In between. By themselves, this agreement reached in September 2015 is not hard international law, but it builds on a very substantial commitment and base. At the core of this SDG agenda is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, because basically what the SDGs are saying in most part is that the human rights of people to healthcare, to education, to social protection, which were promised 72 years ago in 1948, must be achieved in our time, because we're so rich now worldwide that there's no excuse for people to be suffering from these basic deprivations. And then added to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is the commitment under the Paris Climate Agreement, which is, after all, not a commitment to do something for someone else. It's a commitment for our collective survival on a planet that has been destabilized by human-induced climate change. So in this sense, government should take these goals utterly seriously because they matter, because millions of lives depend on it every year, because billions of people's well-being depend on achieving these goals, and especially because the goals are utterly achievable. Even in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis, we could ask, why should anyone on this planet be suffering from complete deprivation of income?
Yes, I think that what we've seen now with this pandemic is that suddenly many of those that we consider absolute problems that could not even be thought of, well, they suddenly happened. In Europe, it's unbelievable. We discussed in Europe for so long about having a common budget without reaching anywhere, and now we have a common budget because of this pandemic, and that's, I mean,
changes a lot. And interestingly, it took Europe so long to do the obvious, like you say, but another obvious point is that the world should have some common budget so that we can address worldwide problems. And that struggle is just an unending one. And I'm hoping that exactly the same way that Europe came to some reality, the world's governments may come to some reality this time. We haven't had a proper global financial conference since 1944. At the end of World War II at the Bretton Woods Conference, and we need another one now.
Yeah, that's my next question, actually. What do you think should be the way to mobilize the necessary resources to reach the SDGs in time or nearly in time? And what extraordinary things must happen in order that we are able to unleash all the resources we have and push a little tiny part of it in the right direction to reach the goals?
The issue of finance, which is an issue really about how resources of a society are directed, is a complicated issue because some kinds of finance should go through governments. Governments tax and then they spend in certain areas, so-called public goods, where the markets won't provide those goods fairly or extensively enough, or won't reach vulnerable people, or because it's a common interest that needs a pooling of effort. So one part is, how can our governments have the resources that they need? Of course, companies need to pay taxes. We need to end the tax havens that accumulate trillions of dollars of big wealth protected in the Cayman Islands or Bermuda or the Bahamas or other tax havens as a kind of gimmick. Of course, the money's not even there. It's just an electronic ledger that has those names on it, which says that the tax authorities don't touch that vast private wealth. And this ends up being a system of great inequality and great injustice. And so mobilizing resources through the budget is vital for education, for healthcare, for social protection, for help for the elderly, for our spending on basic science so that we can solve problems like developing a vaccine and so forth. And for that, we need companies and wealthy individuals to pay taxes, and we need to be able to mobilize adequate finance. Then there are areas where the private sector will do a lot of the financing. A lot of the digital economy has been financed by private business investments. That's how we have our mobile phones and we have our connectivity. That system works reasonably well in many cases, except it leaves out a lot of people. Even today, about half the world isn't on the internet. But you cannot really survive in this world today. You can't thrive if you're not connected, because government services, your public benefits, telemedicine, education for your children, all depend on access. Even as a small business, your capacity to sell goods to consumers all depends on being online. So we need to have public investments and private investments that complement each other in an economic system that has some clear goals. And that's where the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, or climate safety in the Paris Climate Agreement come in.
We haven't discussed about consumers so far. Yesterday, I was out with the dog, and I suddenly noticed in the small town where I live, how many people were walking outside with their dogs, pets, or relatives. And somehow I thought that the radius of our actions, of our interactions, have shrinked. So we are all living in a small neighborhood, physically living there, but then virtually online, working everywhere in the planet. And I was wondering, there must be some things that consumers can do in order to help achieving the SDGs. And now my mind goes also to the work of Professor Leonardo Becchetti, you know very well. So what do you think that would be the role for consumer? How should we work with consumers to stimulate them to somehow keep part of the habits? You know, we haven't driven our cars or flew as much as we did just recently. So there must be some parts of these habits that we can work with the consumers in order to reach the SDGs.
Consumers have both power and responsibility. And our responsibility is first to understand the challenges that we face in the world, and then to use our consumer power, to help solve those problems. You mentioned Professor Leonardo Becchetti. He has the concept of voting with the wallet, that as consumers, we should be responsible spenders, spending on things that are sustainable, are just, and saying to companies that are not sustainable, bye-bye, you're not doing your job. Now, I think we're learning that a lot with the environmental threats that we face right now. We face multiple environmental crises. Human-made climate change, which comes mainly from burning fossil fuels and from deforestation, which releases CO2, carbon dioxide, into the atmosphere. Massive waste and pollution. Third is massive land damage and destruction of the Amazon or the Indonesian rainforests and so forth. And fourth is exactly how all of this turns into an increased frequency of the new emerging diseases which spread from animals to humans, like COVID-19, which came from bats to the human population because of interference in the ecosystems. So we have to solve these problems. And fortunately, if you're a specialist studying these problems, you can find the solutions. For energy, we really can manage the world system on wind, solar, hydro, other zero carbon energy sources. Our vehicles can be electric vehicles rather than petrol burning vehicles, and so on. We really can have smarter farm systems that don't mean deforestation in the Amazon. Of course, you need government that wants to solve that and to enforce it rather than being partners of destruction, which is part of our political governance problem as well. But I would say for consumers, we need to know whether the companies that we are buying products from are behaving properly. And for that, a big move is underway right now by law in Europe and more by moral pressure elsewhere for companies to report on their sustainability practices and enable society to say, no, we're not going to do banking with you because you're financing the fossil fuel industry. We're not going to buy this product because it's unsustainable. We're going to either invest if we're saving for our retirement in so-called ESG investing, environment, social, and governance investing, or if we're consumers, to buy the kinds of products that are produced in a sustainable manner. It's hard work to get this done. The information is not there. The distortions are ever present. Companies greenwash their accounts, as we know very well. I always see ExxonMobil with its posters in the airports saying how much they love green algae and so on, whereas what they do is produce fossil fuels that wreck the planet. I don't care about their algae dishes. I care about their fossil fuels, but they greenwash their activities. And so this is where smart, knowledgeable consumers come in. And after all, that's what Euroconsumers is all about. And Euroconsumers can help to inform consumers not only whether a product lives up to its advertising claims, but also whether it's produced in a sustainable manner and whether the product itself is a sustainable product or a cause of pollution or deforestation or some other aggravant to the environment.
I completely agree. You know, I eat some tuna fish that I know that it's sustainable because the production of this tuna is certified that they don't exceed in fishing. It costs me a little more than the average tuna, but for my budget, I really don't notice it. So, bringing information to consumer is key, and this is something indeed that Euroconsumers members associations could work on, having ideally going to the supermarket and scanning the barcode and learning if that product is sustainable or not. And luckily, there are some organizations that are starting. I mean, the B Corp movement and the certification. So we are starting to get the right ingredients in order to build the tools to give more information to consumers. So this is indeed a positive step forward. And as a last question, do you think that we need to have a new social contract on more sustainable basis? And can the UN have the power in order to do it?
We do have a new social contract in the form of the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Climate Agreement, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and other related commitments and treaties. We've actually signed on to a new direction worldwide. The question is fulfilling those commitments. We live in a world where most sovereignty is at the level of the nation state. And that means that when we have bad, government at a national level, like we've had in the United States during the past 4 years, the political performance is very bad, and it's somewhat hard to control the behavior of a Trump administration and so forth. But the commitments are an absolutely valid guide to where we need to go. And we're now seeing groups of governments work more effectively together. Of course, the European Union, Exhibit A, that we started our discussion with the point that the European Green Deal really is tremendously impressive. And there's now a common pooled budget to help fulfill it. So this is a big advance of countries saying, it's not just our sovereignty, it's our cooperation that matters. Now we're going to have a new president of the United States, thanks God, starting January 2021. President Biden's a lot more cooperative, and he's going to be a very good president. So the US, Europe, I believe we should be working closely with China, with Japan, Korea, with the responsible countries in all parts of the world to promote sustainable development together and to say, we worked hard to get this framework, which we have. Now COVID-19 has been a wake-up call that when we're telling ourselves fables and neglecting science and not paying attention to threats and warnings, it ends up very badly. We've had the wake-up call. We've seen what good performance looks like, how the new digital economy can be used successfully to solve these problems, how advances in renewable energy can replace fossil fuels and so on. So I think our task right now is fulfillment. Let's fulfill what we have promised to do. And I know that consumer power and Euroconsumers is on that path. And I believe that if we really see 2021 as a breakthrough year, where we're going to have a major climate conference, we're going to have a major food systems conference, we're going to have a major biodiversity conference in China. It's not just the conferences, it's getting all of our nations aligned to implement what we have said we will do. Then we're going to find out we really can build a better world.
Yes, thank you, Professor Sachs. And if I can add a closing remark, I believe that the digital technology tools play a key part in having consumers informed and having politicians accountable. I think that the governance of political parties and the way how citizens can have the politician accountable, this is very important. And the digital technologies can really help very much the work of political organization, improving them. And this is why we have started a forum that is going to be live on December the 10th and 11th online, which is called the International Forum on Digital and Democracy. And you are all invited to join us at the International Forum on Digital and Democracy. This year is going to be held, it's the first edition, and it's going to be held online. And Euroconsumers is a partner of this forum. Thank you very much for having us here, and I wish you a good prosecution of the world.